Okay, I guess we'll get started now. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this talk. We're so pleased that you decided to join us. My name is Zach Stein. I'm the head of special collections at Dupré Library. And tonight's program, it's part of a series of programs that's presented in conjunction with the Americans and the Holocaust exhibition. So as you may know, Dupré Library is one of 50 libraries selected by the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum and the American Library Association to host the Americans and the Holocaust traveling exhibition. The exhibition, on view at the Dupré Library until December 9th, examines the motives, pressures, and fears that shaped Americans' responses to Nazism, war, and genocide from 1933 to 1945. Research for the exhibition began in 2013, but United States Holocaust Memorial Museum historians were guided by a mandate set for the museum in 1979, which outlined the need for America's reflection on its role during the Holocaust. Through the research, one thing became abundantly clear. This history is an American story, and it was a local story in communities across the United States. In keeping with this objective, Americans in the Holocaust explores four main questions. What did Americans know? Did Americans help Jewish refugees? Why did Americans go to war? And how did Americans respond to the Holocaust? We hope that this exhibition and our program tonight provokes new questions and opportunities to reflect upon these questions, both in regard to the history and our roles and responsibilities today. Questions like, what is the relationship between knowledge and action? How do we balance humanitarian concerns with political realities? And what are the pressures and motivations that influence individual behavior? On behalf of myself, my partner, Tiffany Ellis, on this, and the staff of Dupré Library, we want to thank you for joining us in asking the tough questions about America's role in this history and our role as citizens of the world today. After this program, we hope you continue to engage with the history, visit the exhibition, and as always, read more books. We are proud to bring this exhibition to Lafayette, and we look forward to conversations it will spark. Please be sure to view the exhibition at Dupré Library on the first floor prior to its closing on December 9th. And we hope you will enjoy us at our future programs as well. So just to briefly introduce, so tonight is our first event with this exhibition, and we are honored to have Manny Klepper here to discuss his experiences with Kristallnacht. And this is especially significant since today marks the 84th anniversary of Kristallnacht, the Night of the Broken Glass. So, without further ado, here is Mr. Manny Klepper.
Thank you, Zach. I appreciate this. Thank you, everyone, for being here. My name is Manfred Klepper. I was born in Trier, Germany, November 18th, 1931. Even so, I was born in Trier. My family and I did not live in Trier. We lived in Mering. They called it Mering on the Mosel, which Mosel is like a little larger than a river. And we lived there. My parents had a grocery store, which was, I called it a mom and pop store. They had all kinds of goods in there, including yards of clothing that you make clothing from, because in those days, back in the 20s and 30s, the women used to make clothing for their children. So we had all kinds of yards of different colors, different patterns, and so forth in the store. My grandparents, who lived in Trier, where I was born, they're the ones that lived there, and my sister, myself, and my parents lived in Mering. Now, my parents took in a young lady who was just out of an orphanage. She was in an orphanage, and they took her in, and she was in her teens. Her name was Anna. And Anna, this is before my time. I wasn't born yet. But my sister and my parents told me about it. and she was our nanny. Actually, she was my sister's nanny to start out. And I came along 10 years later. My sister and I were 10 years apart in age, 10 years and 4 months to be exact. And so Anna helped my mother in many ways. Anna took care of me, my sister. She helped in the store. She cooked. She did everything that was possible that she could help. And things were going really smooth in marrying. That was in the 30s. And we used to have a gentleman with his wife who used to come in. I don't remember his name, unfortunately, but he was the Burgermeister. Burgermeister in English would be like a mayor of a small town or a large town, whichever way you want to put it. This happened to have been a very small town. Mering was known for their vineyards. Mering made wine, and that's why they got the name of Mosel wine. And I'm sure you saw Mosel wine in stores right here. You have Rhine wine, Mosel wine, Alter Schwarze Katz, all these different wines. And this is one of the wines. Well, my parents had a vineyard. They owned one of the vineyards in Mering, besides owning the store. So they were kept pretty busy by taking care of things. In the back of our house, we have a house which was attached to the store. And behind the house, there was like, I used to call it the barn. It was very large, very long. This is where all the wine was being made. Now, being a young kid, I really didn't get the hang of it. And I know I went in there a few times and I saw these big barrels sitting there. And I was told, well, that is wine in there and it's being aged. All right, I accepted that. I didn't know any better. So this is the way we lived in Mering. Well, things were good until I would say around 36, 35, 36, right in that area. My parents had spoken to my grandparents in Trier, and they decided when my grandparents came to this country, they used to say, we are coming to America. They never said United States or anything else. They said America. That was the way they used to put it. We would move into their house on the first floor, and we would live there when the time came. Well, unfortunately, the time came earlier than we anticipated. My grandparents and my sister, well, she was 10 years older, and they decided whether to take me or my sister to the United States. Well, since my sister was older, they decided it would be best for them to take her because I was still a young whippersnapper. So I stayed back with my parents, and my sister went, because there she was able to do work and help out and help us get to this country. And so things became really bad during 36 and 37. And in 37, the Burgermeister, who was the old Burgermeister with his wife, disappeared. We had no way of knowing where he was. In his place came a Nazi, a person who was with the Nazi Party, and he used to come in to the store, and he had the armband around his arm with the swastika on it, and what he tried to do is get rid of all of the Jews in Mering. There were roughly 20 families of Jews that lived in Mering. Well, when he came into power as the mayor, Burgermeister, everyone decided it's time to get out of marrying. So my grandparents had just left to come to this country, and we decided it's time to go, and we moved to Trier and went into the first floor of their house. Upstairs lived a family. They were also also Jewish, and they had 2 children. The young lady was approximately 2 or 3 years older than I was, and the young boy was about a half a year younger than I was. And we used to play in Trier, and things were not bad in Trier in '37, and we lived next door to a convent, and I should say the house was next door to a convent, and the front of the convent, I have to say, we lived at 123 Paulinstrasse. That was where our address, where we lived. And down Paulinstrasse, there were a lot of stores and bakeries and so forth. And on going down was a big red wall, which I always used to say, it's a mile long. It was approximately a block. And so anyway, it was a very high wall, and that was the convent. And that went all the way around the corner, and there was the Catholic Church that belonged to the convent, which was directly adjacent to the convent. Well, Anna, who was very Catholic, and she never missed going to church on Sunday or during the week. Every morning she used to get up, and she never missed a day except if she was sick or something was wrong, and then she couldn't go. But otherwise, she went every day to church. And on Sunday, she asked one Sunday my parents if she was allowed to take me along with her to church. And my parents were very liberal. They said, certainly, it's good for someone else to know a little bit about other religions. So on Sunday mornings, I went with Anna to church. Well, I got to meet the Mother Superior, her assistant, the priest from the church. He was an elderly person. For that matter of fact, he was on the verge of retiring. He wasn't far from retiring. They had a younger priest who was going to take over the church at that time, and but he was still very active, and so I got to know him. They used to stand at the door, and you walked out, and they shook your hand, and they said, well, they got to know me too, and we became friends because I went every Sunday with Anna, and on Friday nights and on Saturdays I went to temple with my parents. So I had both types of religion, Jewish and Catholic. I know quite a bit about the Catholic religion because I learned quite a bit in my younger years about the Catholic religion. And it was fun because during the holidays, like for instance, Easter, well, first of all, in '37, the first thing there was Christmas, and Anna took me along, not in the evening, but that's a long service, but she took me along on Sunday morning, or I should say Christmas morning. I don't know if it fell on a Sunday or not, but it was Christmas morning, and I was there with her, and it was very enjoyable. And after the services were over, we went out, and there it never failed, but the Mother Superior, her assistant, and the priest were always there to shake your hand. But there was one more person there, and that was Saint Nicholas. And I got to know Saint Nicholas. So in Germany, you call it Saint Nicholas, Santa Claus. Here, Saint Nicholas in Germany. And so we all got gifts, and I was very proud. I was only 6 years old at the time, and it was really a thrilling thing to get a gift. And so I went home, I showed my parents, look what I got, and so forth. And 38 came around, and after Christmas, you had the New Year, and then 1938 came, and things were not bad at the beginning of 1938. And things were going along, and we were able to go out, and we went different places and so forth, until November, before the 9th, around maybe the early part of November, things became a little hectic. Where it used to be where the police, where the police used to be in charge, you had now Gestapo. They took over the police station. So that was the start of everything that was going on. So we had to be more cautious, because you don't mess around with Gestapo. They will shoot you than anything else. But anyway, so we waited and everything down the line. The 9th of November came around, and there was a pounding on our door. Not just a knock, but a pounding. My mother went to the door to open up the door, and she was pushed against the wall, and 5 Gestapo men came in. They had wood bats or whatever it was, and metal objects in their hand, and the first thing they went for, my grandparents had a very tall clothing rack, where was very nice, where everybody put their clothes when they came in and so forth, with umbrellas and everything. They just destroyed that completely. And my mother yelled out to everybody, including the people from upstairs, and said, "Inden Keller, Inden Keller." Keller means cellar, and that would be like a basement. And so she said, "Inden Keller," and everybody, all of us, the 6 of us, went down into the cellar. My mother locked the door from the inside with the old-fashioned door with the key, and she locked the door, and we all went down to into the basement. And for some reason, and I have no idea why, but my grandparents had 3 cots, regular cots, that were down in the basement, besides the washing machine my mother used, was the old washing machine with the crank, where you had the clothes, where you had to dry them that way, and then hang them up. There were no dryers, and hang them up and let them dry. And she had clothes hangers, ropes hanging there to hang them up. And we sat down there, and we listened to a lot of noise, breaking of glass, breaking of furniture. It was absolutely horrendous. I can't even explain it to you. Without hearing it, you would not even understand what I'm talking about. It was terrible. We heard this for approximately half an hour or somewhere around that, and then it stopped. And we thought, well, maybe it's over with. So we waited for a few minutes and started all over again. They went upstairs and did identically the same thing upstairs that they did downstairs. They demolished the upstairs just like they did the downstairs. Well, this again lasted for approximately a half an hour. And then there was silence, nothing. And we waited about 15 minutes, roughly. And my mother asked the lady, and you have to forgive me, I don't know her name anymore, and I don't know the kid's name. It just left my memory. Anyway, she asked the lady, would you want to come upstairs with me? We'll see what damage was done. So both women went upstairs, and my mother opened up the door, and we heard a shriek, like, hey, like a shriek coming from both women. And the 3 of us kids wanted to go upstairs to see what happened, and Anna said, no, remember what your mother said, you are staying down here with me until your mother's come back downstairs again. So we just sat there. And we must have sat there, a good half hour, because my mother and the lady went through our apartment. Then they went upstairs and looked at that apartment and checked everything out. And then they came downstairs, and both of them were sobbing. They were just crying, I guess you would call it. And we said, "What is wrong?" And they said, "Come upstairs." And she mentioned, "Make sure you have your shoes on." Well, we had our shoes on anyway, but I don't think my mother knew what she was talking about at that time. It was like a shock. And so all of us went upstairs, and when I walked up with the other two kids and I saw the damage just in the hallway, I knew that they had already damaged the hall tree, because they did that while we were still up there. And we went through, and there was glass and pieces of furniture all over the place. My mother took us into the kitchen, and my mother had those cabinets that were in the kitchen that was always filled with everyday dishes. And those dishes were no longer in the cabinets, they were broken on the floor. Even the drawers where the silverware was in, the utensils, were on the floor, and the drawers pulled out on the floor. And we kept walking, and she said, "Okay, come into the dining room." So we went to the dining room. My parents had a beautiful furniture in the dining room where she had all of her dishes, her good dishes, and knickknacks. It was large, I can't even think of the name, but it was a large piece of furniture with glass inside where you could see yourself in there, and you see all of the knickknacks and so forth, and glass doors. Well, everything from inside that cabinet was on the floor, broken. And the mirror in the back was smashed. The door wasn't broken, but the glass from the door was smashed. And we could not believe it. It was just a mess. The whole dining room was a total disaster. And then she took us into the living room. And my mother used to have little knickknacks on the little tables. Here, there, little things. They were all on the floor. The ones that were broken were the ones that were made of glass or porcelain or something. The metal ones were just thrown on the floor. But there was one other piece, and that was a rocking chair. My grandfather said when he left, "We're not going to take this rocking chair with us to America. It'll never make the trip." Well, unfortunately, it never made the trip in our house either, because it was completely demolished. So we went down all over, then we went down. She took us into the first bedroom. The bedrooms were lined up in such a way where my parents' bedroom was first, and then you made a little corner, and my bedroom was like in the middle, and Anna's bedroom was toward the back, actually toward the front, I should say, because Paulinstrasse was right there. The windows were right there into Paulinstrasse. And we went from one bedroom to another bedroom. In my mother's bedroom, she had a dresser that had two sections of glass mirrors, one like this, and next to it. That was completely demolished, gone. And everything that was in the drawers were ripped open. Everything was on the floor or on the bed. The drawers were thrown on the bed. It was just a total disaster, straight down the line. And we went from from their bedroom into my bedroom, same thing. I had a small mirror that I had on my dresser. That was smashed. Everything that was made of glass was smashed. And the drawers in the same position as my parents, all over the floor or on the bed. Then we went into Anna's room, which is the next one over, and the same thing there. Everything was on the floor, and it was a total disaster. And there was glass even on the beds. And, well, I can't even, it's hard to explain when you talk about it. When I talk about it to this day, I still can see it in my mind, what it looked like. It's there. This is why I really never wanted to talk about it, but that's another story. Anyway, we came back out again, and we sat in the kitchen. That's the only thing that was still left were the chairs in the kitchen and the table. They were not damaged. And we just sat there. And it was now dark, but this happened at dusk. And now it was dark, and upstairs, we went upstairs too, and the same thing upstairs, just like it was downstairs. And as we sat down, and we just, we just sat there. And about, maybe half an hour went by. We were sitting there. We were all just shocked. That I think the three of us kids were just, I don't even know how I can explain it to you. We were just, didn't know what to say. There was a knock on the back door, and Anna said, I will go and see who's back there. And she went back there, and she brought in 3 sisters from the convent. And when they walked in, and they saw what was in the hallway, she said, what happened? She said, we heard some noises across the way, and we didn't know what was going on. So Anna said, let me show you around. And she went from room to room to room and showed the sisters what had happened. And after they were all through, they went upstairs, the same thing, and they came back down. And the 3 sisters said, well, we're going to help you clean up this mess. If it takes all night long, which it did, we will be here for you. And they said, give us a little time. We'll go across to the alley. There was an alleyway, and that led right, there was a big picket fence, metal, high fence, and they had doors leading into the convent from the alley. And they went over there, and they said, we'll be back with cans, metal cans to put the stuff in, garbage cans, and brooms, and shovels, and we'll help you. So anyway, they went out, and they waited for about maybe 20 minutes or so, knock on the door again. Anna went to open up. There weren't just 3 sisters there. There were now 6 sisters there. And they all were carrying either garbage cans or cleaning equipment to sweep up and shovel up and so forth. And my mother said to the 3 of us kids, go downstairs in the cellar and stay there, because all you'll be is in our way if you stay up here. So the 3 of us went downstairs. We sat on the cots, and we just listened to the noise. I don't know if you heard when glass hits a metal container, how much noise it makes. Either glass or metal, it really is loud. Well, that's what we heard all night long when we were sitting there. None of us could sleep. We were just looking at one another. I don't even think we were able to talk to one another because we were in shock. It was something that we never anticipated. And being now, I had almost my 7th birthday. The 9th of November is when Kristallnacht, when Kristallnacht happened, and actually the 9th and 10th. And the 18th was my birthday. So I was going from 6 to 7. So we just sat there, and I'm thinking, I'll be 7 years old in 9 days, and this is really a rotten way to spend it. So anyway, so we just sat there, and we heard them doing downstairs, then upstairs, and it was around, in the morning, like 9, 10 o'clock in the morning, when my mother came downstairs, and she said, okay, you can come upstairs now, and everything's been cleaned up. So we go upstairs, and everything was clean, but there was no dishes, there were no furniture. Some of the furniture was just damaged completely to the point where you couldn't use it. And so we just went there. And the sister said, we'll be back. And they left with the garbage cans. They must have gone back and forth during the night to empty the garbage cans or get different ones, because they couldn't do it with just 3, 4, 5 different garbage cans, both downstairs and upstairs. It would take more than that. So they took whatever they had back with them, but they did one more thing, and I'll never forget. They said to my mother, you know, you cannot sleep in your beds tonight, and we're going to take the bed sheets and the blankets, everything off your bed, and we will take it with us to the convent, and we'll wash it for you and bring it back. It may not come back today. If it doesn't, it'll come back tomorrow. And they did the same thing with the upstairs also, because they did the same thing for them, and took all of our linens and everything over to the convent. So we spend the rest of the day shifted the rest of the hour, but about an hour went by, and there was another knock on the door. And now, remember this, we did not have breakfast, and we did not have supper, because we had nothing in the house to eat, nor did we have any to put it on if we did have something. No plates, no dishes, no nothing. And the 3 of the 6 sisters came back with baskets, and in the baskets was food, milk, bread, even sweets for the kids, and a big urn of coffee for the adults. And they brought plates and cups, everything they bought, so we were able to have something to eat. And we really appreciated that so much. We couldn't even explain to you how much we appreciated that. And so we were able to have breakfast, and then the day went by, and from that moment on, my mother and myself never set foot outside to go anywhere. Anna did all the shopping for both us downstairs and for our neighbors upstairs, because since she was not Jewish, they would not touch her, because being Catholic, they don't want to upset the Catholic religion, because Germany, surely in Trier, was very, very Catholic. The people there were very Catholic, and Hitler did not want to make any more problems than he already had. So he left the people alone. So she used to go to our shopping and everything else, and came back with the food and so forth. And this is the way we lived for the entire year of almost into 38. Well, I had my birthday, which was really nothing, and 38 went by. Oh, I have to say one more thing. Remember I said the 9th and 10th? Well, the 9th, houses and apartments were damaged. On the 10th, all of the Jewish temples were damaged all over Europe, not just in Trier, but all over Germany, straight down the line. Some were burnt in certain cities, they were burned, and others were just smashed. And in our town, they were smashed. Now, my father and the gentleman from upstairs were not home. If they would have been home, they probably would have been taken as prisoners or as going into a concentration camp. But at that time, they were building more concentration camps. But they were not home. And my mother always used to tell me, when I asked, where's Dad? I used to say, where's Papa? And she said, oh, he's playing cards. Okay, being a young kid, I used to believe, okay, he's playing cards, fine. And this was every day. And sometimes he came home at midnight. Sometimes he didn't come home until 3 in the morning. Sometimes at odd hours he came home, and there were days when he didn't come home at all. And I said, where's Dad? He said, oh, he's on a trip. He never told me where my father was. And I let it go at that. So anyway, 39 came around, and around, I would say it was either April or May. It was still cool, but it wasn't cold. And there was another bang on the door. And there were two Gestapo agents, men, that said, everybody out of the house. And both upstairs and us, he said, walk down to your left and go down to the red wall and stay there in the middle of the red wall. So we all went to the middle of the red wall, and we didn't know what he wanted us to do in the middle of the red, on Paulinstrasse, where the red wall was. They even closed all of the stores along Paulinstrasse. So we walked down there, and to our surprise, we saw 5 people standing against that red wall. One was the Mother Superior, one was her assistant, and one was the rabbi, and the other one was a person I did not really know. I don't know who that was, but my mother knew who he was. And they were standing there, and there was a Gestapo officer on one of his big cars, the old-time cars that had the running board, and he stood there and gave a big speech on what these people have done, what the convent has done, and they were wrong, and they had helped the Allies, and a whole bunch of lies, everything that he said. And I couldn't quite understand everything that he was talking about. So he started, and then he stopped, and he motioned to a truck. That there was a truck parked way in back of the of where the car was, and they moved everybody away into the side. They were on this side and this side of where the middle was open, where the truck was able to come down. So the truck pulled back and parked itself about halfway where we were and where the people were against that wall. And we were thinking, what's going to happen? And he did some more talking, and then he gave the order to lift up the tarp. When he lifted up the tarp, there was a machine gun right on back there, and a Nazi Gestapo agent was behind that machine gun. And then the officer said, fire. And something that went, I can't even explain it to you. 5 people were shot in cold blood by the Gestapo. They didn't do a thing. They were people of the cloth. They were Catholic. They were Jewish. They were shot for no reason whatsoever. And then he gave the order to leave. And they left those 5 people laying on the floor. And my mother said, take the kids back to the house, and we'll stay here, and we'll see what we can do to help carry the people back into the convent. So Anna was crying because she knew the Mother Superior very well, and she was crying all the way on the way home. And all I can say is I was shocked. I was stunned, shocked, and I can't even explain it to you. I couldn't believe what I saw. And so we went back to the house, and we just sat on the chair. We didn't even say a word to anybody. Anna was crying, and we were just looking at one another, the kids, and we had no words. We couldn't talk. And about half an hour, 40 minutes, my mother came back with the lady, and she said we carried the bodies back into the convent, and we came back. And she was, both women were also crying because it's something that was just unreal. And so 39 went by, and we never set foot outside the door, my mother and I, or the people from upstairs. And yet, we have not seen my dad in at least maybe 2 months, maybe a little over 2 months, until one day there was a knock on the back door. It must have been around midnight, and my mother went to open up, and there was my dad and the gentleman from upstairs. And I looked and I said, "Where were you?" Well, my dad never used the word underground. He always said resistant fighters. For some reason, I don't know why, I can't answer that question, I don't know. But it was always resistant fighters. And he said, we were with the resistant fighters, and we had a chance to come here. She said, my mother said, well, do you know what happened? She said, yes, we know everything. We know what happened with Kristallnacht. We know what happened with the 5 people that were shot. We know everything, and there was nothing that we could do about it. Not a thing, because there were too many Gestapo agents around, that some were in civilian clothes, some were in uniforms, and we didn't know who was what or who was who. So we couldn't do a thing. So he stayed with us for about overnight. And he, for that matter of fact, they went into the basement, into the cellar, and stayed there. They didn't even stay upstairs. And in the morning, before it was light, they snuck out and went back through the convent, past the cemetery, and back wherever they came from, and they disappeared. And there again, we didn't get to see them for maybe another 2 months, 3 months, and that's how it went straight through 1939. Well, 1939 ended, and we went into 1940, and 40 was no better. It got worse. And Hitler made a proclamation. He said, no Jewish child is allowed in any public school, which meant that we were not allowed to go to school. So there again, the sisters came over and said, we will teach you. We will bring over books and writing material, and we will teach you. And that's exactly what they did. They brought over books. The main one was reading, writing, and arithmetic. That was the main thing right there. And also some history books. And so they taught us how to read, write, and they gave us assignments. And the next night when they came, they took the assignments and they checked the assignments off right there and then. And this is the way it went straight down the line, 39 to 40, and this is how we learned a little bit of reading, a little bit of arithmetic, a little bit of writing, and they taught us. Without their teaching us, I don't know what would have happened. So we got our learning through them. And one day back in 1940, and that was around, I would say, the early part of 1940, there was another knock on the door, and it was a courier from the office of the mayor of Trier. And he said, are you so-and-so, so-and-so? You have to report to the consulate, in the German consulate, at a certain time and on this and this day. So my mother and myself, we reported to the consulate, and there was a long line there. And we waited. We didn't know what they wanted from us at the time, and we waited, and we were able to get through through the line and so forth, when the line was moving, and we got to the desk, and there we were told that we had a big envelope. In that envelope was our visas to come to this country. And they told us, this right here gets you to America. And so what we did, they told us we have to report to Berlin, we had to go to Berlin. Well, Berlin is where my father was born, and he had two sisters and a family that lived in Berlin yet. And so they told us we have to get to Berlin at a certain time because we have to report to the consulate in Berlin. There was no more American consulate. The American consulate had left Germany altogether. It was just strictly the German consulate. So we got on the train after so forth, but after we got the orders that we have to go, we leave, and so forth. And we were allowed to take one suitcase, one small suitcase with just the essentials in it, like little odds and ends, underwear, socks. Maybe my mother had a skirt with pant with a shirt and whatever, and I had a shirt and so forth. And this is what we were able to travel with. No money, no nothing. But while we were ready to leave, escorted us to the train station. The ride from Trier to Berlin was about a day and a half ride. That's approximately what the trip was, a day and a half. And so we went, Anna went with us, and we even told Anna, why don't you come with us? We can send you visas to come to America. She says, no, I belong here. I am going to be part of the church. Now, we thought she might be a sister or a nun, which she didn't do. Well, later on, while we were in this country, we received a letter. She worked with the convent, but she was not a nun or a sister, but she worked with the convent to help out in there with whatever they needed. And so we got on the train, and we went to Berlin. And I fell asleep, and next thing I know, we were in Berlin, and we got off the train, and Anna made sure that she would get a telegram to our relatives in Berlin, letting us know that we got onto the train, gave the number of the train like you do with an airplane, gave them the numbers, and told them, check with it, takes about a day and a half, and keep checking on it. They're on that train, and they will be coming to Berlin. And when we got there, both of my aunts, one was named Irma, and the other one was named Henschen. And they were waiting for us. They had, Irma had one son. He was older than I was. And Henschen had two children, one boy and one girl, and they were older than I was. And so Erna said, we will stay with us, and because we have more room. But the first thing she said when we got off the train, she said, where is Fritz? Well, Fritz was the nickname of my father. His name was Morris, but everyone used to call him Fritz from the time he was a young kid, just like my nickname is Manny. It's really Manfred. That's German name, Manfred here in this country. And so anyway, that was his name. So she said, where is Fritz? Well, we couldn't answer her question, but we just said, we don't know. And we dropped the subject at that point, and we went with them to their house. And we told them we have to report to the German consulate. We had a big manila envelope, but we couldn't open it because it was sealed. We had to be opened by the people from the consulate. So the day came, and my mother and I got into a cab, and we went to the consulate, which is in downtown Berlin. And there again was a long, long line waiting to go inside to go to the desk where you had to give them all this information in the envelope. So we waited in line, and then we got to the front of the line, and the young man who was there, he opened up the envelope, and he took it out, and he looked at it, and he said, okay, and we have something else here for you, which is your visas for United States, America, not United, America. So we were thrilled, unbelievably thrilled, so, but only for my mother and myself. And I had come from this country over to Germany, to the German consulate in Berlin. So we got that. Then he sealed up the envelope and put something else into the envelope. And in the front of the envelope, it had my picture with, it's in my book. It has a picture of me so I could travel from one place to another place. So, and the same thing with my mother. She had the same thing, a picture with that we could travel from one area to another area. So we were told, you have to report to the airport at this and this time and at this and this date and be there, and you'll get further instructions. So we went back to Aunt Erna's and with the cab, and we waited until the day came, and then Aunt Erna and Henshin went with us to the airport, but it could only go so far, but the airport was blocked, and there were Gestapo people right there. So we got out of the cab, and we showed them the envelope, and they told us, okay, go on this line right here. So we went in the line, and we looked around. There must have been 5 lines with nothing but people all the way back and all the way to the front. And we looked, and I said, wow, there's a lot of people here. And so we slowly went down there. It must have taken us a couple of hours to get from where we were down to the front where the big desk was. There was a long desk where you had Gestapo agents for each line, and they took your passport, your envelope, and looked at it, and gave it back to you. And they took my mother's the suitcase and said, empty it. So she wasn't fast enough, so he took it, dumped it on the table, and he was checking to see there was nothing in there of value that we were taking with us. And then he said, okay, put it back in again. So my mother put everything back in the suitcase. Then he went, one more thing. He said, I want to see your purse. So he emptied the purse out. Well, Anna had given my mom's some money just to take along in case we needed it. Well, I guess it must have been too much, because the Gestapo officer who was at that desk said, you have too much money. So he takes it, pulls it apart, and gives my mother 2 marks, which means nothing, and he kept the rest. And he said, okay, now go down this way, and you'll be directed to where you're going. In the meantime, we saw airplanes. I mean, I've never seen so many airplanes, except when I was in the military, that were down there, parked. I can't even tell you how many there were. There were a whole bunch, and they all had the Russian emblem on the tail end. And we looked at one another and said, oh, what's going to happen now? So we were told to go here, here. We were the 4th airplane where we entered. There were the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, yeah, the 4th one where we were got on there. And they didn't have inside, we were not allowed to go inside, we had to go from the outside, and they had those wrought iron steps that you had to step on and work your way up into the door. So we got up there. Now the young lady who was the stewardess, she was very nice. She was able to speak some German. So she told us we did not have any assigned seats. The seats, you had so many people on that aircraft, which was, I think, like about 80 or so. It was like a C-47, similar to something like that. And so they told her, go in the middle right there. You can sit there, and So we sat down in the middle, and we waited until everybody was in. When everybody was in and all the seats were filled, the door closed, and we heard the pilot come on, and he said, this is the pilot, so, and he said, we're on our way to Moscow, Russia. That's our destination. So, okay, fine. We got out of Germany anyway. And as one plane after another, the first one went out, and the second one, the third one, they all followed one another to the runway. And they all took off one at a time. And then once we got up in the air, everybody went, hey, just like that. But we were really happy because we were out of Germany now. We were in a Russian aircraft, and we figured we were now safe, which we were. And anyway, I was so tired because we had to get up early in the morning. I don't even know how long it took to fly from Berlin to Moscow. I had no idea, but I fell asleep. I fell asleep right in the chair. I just slept the whole way. And my mother woke me up and said the pilot was just on the radio, and he said for everybody to make sure their seatbelts are on and sit up, and we'll be landing in about 20 minutes or so. And so we waited, and the plane landed, and we all got off the plane one by one. Each plane landed separately, and then straight down the line, they all followed suit. And so we got off. We got off with the wrought iron because they didn't have enough room to go into the airport. There were too many planes. And so we got off again with the wrought iron stairs, and we went down. And then there was a young man who was there. He could speak a little German also, and he said, go in this direction and you'll go into the airport. Long haul. You have to go to check in at this and this desk, and also go through customs, which was kind of crazy because we had nothing with us to check except a little suitcase. So anyway, we went that way, and we went down this long hall, and all of a sudden, I saw my dad, and he was coming toward us. I couldn't believe it. I told Mom, I said, it's Dad. And she looked, and it was. And he came over, and he said, we're all just, I couldn't even tell you how happy we were to see each other. And my mother's first question was, how long have you been here? He said, I've been here 2 days. I said, how did you get here? And then he said, the resistant fighters have a way of moving you from one place to another. And okay, and so he was in Russia way before we got there. But I said, do you know, I knew exactly everything that was going on. I knew you were on an aircraft, and you were on your way here, but I checked it with the attendant we're at the consulate. So I said, well, we have to get a room. He said, it's all taken care of. I have a hotel room. I've been living in it for the past 2 days. It's a nice hotel, and everything is set. And the young man at the front desk knows that you're on your way and you're here, and I'm meeting you at the airport, and we're going back to the hotel. So we went back to the hotel, and the young man that was behind the counter, we had to sign in and so forth and check in, and he was able to speak a little English, not English, German, and we couldn't speak anything but German. So so my dad took us up to the room, and it was a nice sized room where we could all sleep, and they had a couch for me to sleep on, and they had the bed, and it was very comfortable. And my dad said, there's one thing, tomorrow morning we have to report to both the Russian embassy and the American embassy because we have to do this every day. This is what I had to do since I've been here. So we got up early in the morning, we had breakfast at the hotel, and we left for the consulate. The consulates were they were in walking distance. They were maybe 3, 4, or 5 blocks from one another, from the German consulate, from the Russian consulate to the American consulate. So we walked from one to the other, checking in. And we asked at the American consulate, how long will we be here? He said, well, we have a little problem. He said, Mr. Klepper does not have a visa to go any further but Russia. So we said, well, what do we do? He said, well, we've already taken care of that. We have contacted your relatives in the United States, and they're working on getting a visa for Mr. Klepper. I said, okay. I said, how long will that take? He said, that could take anywhere from a week to a month. He said, I can't give you the answer. He said, I don't know. He said, so anyway, so every day we had a report to both consulates, but we were able to travel all over the place, and I even got to see something that I never expected to see, and that was Lenin in a tomb, in a glass tomb, with his red uniform on, and I remember that very clearly, and I wasn't sure who it was at first, and then my dad explained it to me, and that was Lenin when he was in charge before Stalin, and so we saw him, and we saw a whole bunch of other places, and there were churches which were beautiful. Russia had some very beautiful churches. They were big, beautiful inside, so we were able to go there. And we went all over the place, and every day we went to the consulate and asked the same question in the American consulate. Have you heard anything from my dad's, Mr. Klepper's visa? No, not yet. This was going on, and a week went by, and then a week and a half went by, and then one day we were coming home from one of our little tours that we took, and the young man who was at the front desk said, we just received word from the American consulate. You're supposed to report there as soon as you can. Since it's already too late, they're closed, you have to go tomorrow morning. First place you go to is the American consulate before you go to the Russian consulate. So we decided, okay, maybe, good news. So we went to the American consulate that morning, and the visa had come through from the United States to Russia, and my dad was now able to travel with us to all these other countries that we had to go through to get to the United States. So we were able to do that. Then we were told by the American consulate, there is a train that you will be going on. It's the Siberia Express, that's what it was called. And it said you will be going, it's approximately a 3-day trip that you will be on that train, and it will take you to another city, and there you will get onto a bus. He had all the information that will take you to a ferry, and I looked at it, he had me completely confused. So anyway, we got to the train, we got on the train. Oh, it was beautiful, and we used to go in the morning and afternoon and evening into the dining car. The one thing that I got very tired of, Russia is known to have caviar, and red and black caviar. Well, it's on the table, just like you have bread on the table. It's on your table right there. But we ate so much, I was so sick and tired of it, I didn't want to see it anymore. So anyway, so this is how we traveled for 3 days. And then we came to the end, and we got off, and there was buses, not just one, but buses waiting for us. I don't know how many there were, but there was a lot of them. And we got on the bus, and that took us to a location which was like a ferry. It was a ferry, like a boat. And we said, where is this taking us? He said, well, you'll know when you get onto the ferry. They will give you all the instructions once you get on there. So everybody went on there, but they had not one but a few ferries that were able to take people from one place to another place and so forth. But everybody that was on the train couldn't go on one ferry, it would have sank. So anyway, they had so many people, then they stopped, then the next one, then we took off, and the next one came. Then the next thing that we were told, our next destination was China. And I said, wow, okay. So we went by ferry. I can't even tell you how long we were on that ferry, but I was so tired, I couldn't even tell you. I was just exhausted. And we got off the ferry, and we were taken by another bus over to a consulate. I don't even remember exactly, in China, and they looked us everything over, and they stamped another stamp that we got put onto our visas. And but we didn't stay there very long. I think it was like overnight. And then the next thing was we were put onto another boat that took us to Korea. So that was our next stop, was Korea. And there we were about maybe a day and a half. And from there, we went to Japan. Now, people ask me, did you fly or go by boat? Well, the only thing I can remember, I only flew once, and that was from Germany to Moscow. I never flew anywhere else. I said no. So we must have gone by boat from Korea to from China to Korea, and or I should say from Korea to Japan. And once we got to Japan, went to Yokohama, and we got off there, and they said, okay, look for a hotel, and you'll be here for a while. So, and this was 1940, so there was no war yet, so it was 1940. And the Japanese people really treated us very, very nicely. And so we got a hotel in Tokyo, right in Tokyo. And every day again, we had a report to the Japanese and the American consulate. And every time, there was a very, really nice young lady, and she's the one that, with the young man who took care of us in Russia, this young lady took care of us in Japan. And we used to, every morning we used to go there, we used to joke with her and everything else, and I said, okay, when's the next boat coming to take us to America? She said, I don't know. And what was happening was, after a while we found out, was all the ships, even your cruise ships, which they call little cruise ships that they had in those days, were being used here in the States to transport troops from the United States to England. And this is why there were no ships available to come over to Japan to take the people to Japan. But in Japan, everyone split up. The ones that were going to the United States were split up. The ones that were going to Brazil, the ones that were going anywhere else, they were split up, so they knew who was going where. And they had their passports and everything set up. So they were there. Some people flew from Japan to where they were going. Like we came to the States, we had to wait for a ship to come and get us. So we waited. We were in Japan for a little over a month before we finally got word that a ship was leaving San Francisco and coming to Yokohama. It would take approximately, in those days the ships were not like they are today. It took, they said it'll take about 12 to 14 days. And so we just waited. And every day we reported to the consulate, and the young lady used to say, it's getting closer, it's getting closer. So, and we kept coming back and forth. And finally, one day, we went to see him. He said, "We got good news for you. The ship is almost here." We said, "Really?" "Yes." Well, what we didn't know, we went back to the hotel and we went to sleep. The ship docked in Yokohama that night, during the night. In the morning, when we reported to the consulate said, "The ship is here. It's in Yokohama. There will be a bus that will take you to the ship." And that's exactly what happened. So we got from Yokohama onto the ship right there. And it was a beautiful ship. The name of the ship was the USS San Francisco. And I also have that in my book. The name of the ship and the manifest of the ship and so forth. Just like I have my visa and everything with my picture on it is all in the book, and my picture with my parents. I have to tell you that I had curly hair. Nobody could believe that I had curly hair, long curly hair, and it was blonde. And everybody said, "Where did you get that blonde hair?" Oh, I didn't know. But my dad was bald, and my mother had dark hair, and my sister had black dark hair. And I was the only one with blonde curly hair. So I don't know. So anyway, not to change the subject, so we went onto the ship, and they're really nice. I mean, they told us what cabin to go. We went into a cabin, and we were on deck and everything else. And then they said the ship was going to be leaving in the next hour or so. And it did. It left Yokohama, and then our destination was San Francisco. And unfortunately, my parents were very seasick, like many, many of the other families that were there. So the kids, like myself and some of the other kids, well, the parents didn't go to dinner or to breakfast or lunch. They stayed in their room throwing up and playing English. And they were sick. And so we were picked up by the crew, and we were able to eat with the crew members. And there must have been about 5 or 6 of us that were with the crew all the time for the first three or 4 days. And it was really nice. One time we even had an opportunity to eat in the captain's table, just the 5 kids and us. It was a pleasure, really nice. And then one day the doctor came in and from the ship and told my parents, "Okay, it's long enough being in your cabin. You've been taking Dramamine," which was, you know, for seasickness. And but naturally, he spoke in German, because there again, we couldn't speak a word of English, so we couldn't understand them. But quite a few of the crew members, including the captain, they were able to speak German. Some of the captains were even from foreign countries, and like they have now. And so he made my parents get up from their bunk and go upstairs and sit in the fresh air, which really helped them a lot. And while they were sitting up there, they felt better. And then he told them, "You know, you have not eaten anything in so many days. You've got to eat something." Well, they didn't feel like eating anything. So anyway, but they were forced to it. So the doctor told them what they can have and so forth. Well, anyway, they came around after the 5th day, and they started feeling more normal. And so we traveled for 14 days from Yokohama to San Francisco. And they used to tell us where we were heading, and they said, and just down here, down the road, is Hawaii. You pass by Hawaii, but you can't see it unless you have binoculars. And so we told us everything when you were going through giving us a tour. And so as we went, we kept going, and the first thing I noticed when we came was the Golden Gate Bridge. and that was huge to me. I mean, going underneath the Golden Gate Bridge was really something that I didn't know what it was, and they explained what it was. And we also went past Alcatraz because it was very close. And so we docked at Yokohama, at San Francisco, and there we were met by relatives, which were relatives from my grandparents who notified them that we were coming, and we'd be there at a certain time, certain date, and just keep track and ask when the ship was arriving in San Francisco Harbor. So they met us at the harbor, and we spent about anywhere from 5 to 10 days in San Francisco, and that's where they lived. And I used to love the hills. The thing I loved most of anything else were the cable cars. I loved going up and down with those cable cars. Being a young kid, I was 8 years old now, and it was really fun going that way. They took us all over, and then they took us to a market, which was a market that sold nothing but fruit market, and the gentleman, I guess it must have been my uncle or second or third uncle, was driving. And I said, no, I don't want to drive, I want to go on the cable car. And they said, no, you can't go on the cable car there, you have to drive. So we drove there, they showed us all around. And then the time was up, and we got onto another train that took us to Chicago. All my relatives lived in Chicago, every one of them. And so that took from San Francisco to Chicago, I think it was like two and a half or 3 days, something like that. But they weren't as fast in those days. They were the old locomotive type trains. And so we were on the train, and it was really nice. And we had like a room where you had your own bath, and you had it was really, really comfortable. And we went every day to have breakfast, lunch, and dinner in the cafeteria, in the dining area from the train, and it was nice. And then we were told we were arriving at Union Station in Chicago. That's one of the big stations that they have in Chicago, Union Station. And so when we got to Union Station and we got off the train, my whole relatives, everybody, my cousins, my uncles, my aunts, my grandparents, my sister, they were all waiting for us at the train station. So when I got off, the first thing my sister said, and I'll never forget that, I had a sailor suit on, one of these sailor suits, short pants. It was September when we arrived here, just about 2 weeks before the high holidays. And she looked at me, she said, boy, do you look German. She looked in German, she said that. And I said, well, yeah, I just came from there. And she said, Manfred, now we have to give you a nickname. And she started naming off a whole bunch of nicknames. I mean, straight down the line. I said, no. Then she come up with Manny. And I thought for a second, I said, that's not bad. Okay. From that day on, Manny was my nickname. And I'm known all over as Manny. Even when I went to the military, the only ones that knew my real name was the officers who was in charge and what was on my papers and so forth. They're the only one that knew of Manfred. Everybody else knew me as Manny. And no one did I ever talk about from me coming from Germany, not once. But coming here, I couldn't speak a word of English. So we were here until the September, October. I started school here in Chicago. And I was very fortunate. The school that I attended, my homeroom teacher spoke German fluently. And so her and I were able to converse back and forth. Well, we did this for a whole month, and she gave me all my assignments in German, and she checked me in the morning and everything else. I couldn't talk to the kids, but she was trying to teach me, and all of a sudden, one day, a month had gone by, and she said, Manny, in German, she said, I want you to stay after school tonight. I have to talk to you. I said, uh-oh, what did I do? So we sat down after everybody left, and she said, today is the last day we're speaking in German. Boy, that was like a, wow, I don't believe this. I said, no. She said, yes, you are going to learn the English language, and if you depend on me to speak German to you, you will never, ever learn English. So from now on, all your assignments will be given to you in English, just like the rest of the class, and you've got to learn and you've got to do it. Well, I made up my mind I had no choice, but she didn't give me any choice. Now, with the help of the kids in the school, which were really helpful, they helped me do my homework and helped me read in English and helped me write, and the way I wrote the German way, they wrote a print and so forth, everything they helped me with. And I lived on Henry Street at the time, and I had some real nice friends there, really great friends that we played together, and they also helped me learn English. So it took me about a couple of months, and believe it or not, I learned English. And it was like a broken English, but I was able to speak English until I was able to get rid of my accent. Even so, I do have a little accent. You can ask my wife certain words. When I say it, she said, uh-oh, it's a German coming out of you. So there are certain words. And so anyway, so I learned English, and I went to school, and that was my story as far as it goes. Now, I did have some very close friends who came up to me not too long ago when I was speaking, because I spoke in quite a few different areas, from Lake Charles all the way into Alexandria. Most of my speaking was done in Baton Rouge. I spoke to 1,000 kids there, and spoke in temples and everywhere. And then we went to Alexandria, and I spoke to a church, and I spoke to a college that I believe belonged to that church. And so I had a lot of different places. What I'm very proud of is when I spoke at, and this was before anything else, I spoke at Lake Charles, and I received the key to the city, not from the mayor wasn't there, but from 2 councilmen from City Hall. And I didn't even realize it. My wife gave me a nudge, and you see, I was talking to someone else, and she gave me a nudge. She said, they're calling you. Well, after I was sitting down, after I spoke, and I went up there, and they said, this is the key to the city. This is from us and from the mayor of Lake Charles. So I was very proud. It's hanging up in our living room. My wife got me one of these frames and put it in. I'm very proud of it. And the next thing I was very proud of is that I got a call one day from the Space Center at Stennis Space Center in Mississippi. And I received a call from the person who's in charge of the NASA, one of the sections, because they have different sections. But there they have rockets that they put onto the spaceships. And these rockets are made by either GE or one of the other companies. And from there, they get shipped to Stennis Space Center to be checked and checked and checked. They told us it takes up to a year to get one of those rockets checked before it goes to either California or Florida to be put onto a rocket, the rocket onto a space vehicle. And so it was a great honor to be speaking to both NASA and to the Navy. And I'll tell you, it was wonderful. My wife and my daughter and my son-in-law are sitting here, and unfortunately my two grandchildren that are not here tonight, one of them is in Virginia, and the other one is in school at Northwestern University in Chicago, Evanston, Illinois. I wish they were here, and I'll tell you the story about this book. And and it was a great honor. And there I received a small coin from the person that was in charge. The admiral happened to have been in, I think, Washington, D.C. at a meeting. So the person that was next in charge was the captain from the base. And he said, I have a coin that came from the admiral, and I want you to have it. It was like a silver dollar. It had NASA written on one side and U.S. Navy on the other side. I'm very proud of it. That also is standing up. My wife bought me a stand. Let's put it on. And I also received a plaque, beautiful plaque, this big, which is hanging in our hallway when you come in, that has on there the date, my picture, and it's beautiful. It was at the end. It's an anniversary of. It was the week of. They celebrate 1 week at Stennis. The Navy started that over 25 years ago, where they celebrate or commemorate Kristallnacht. So they go from Monday through Friday and so forth. So when they asked me to speak, what day would be good for you? I said, any day you choose. So we went down there this particular time and I spoke. And so I got that from the Space Center, which was a great honor. And I received quite a few honors. And then we came back and I received a phone call. And the phone call, after I got through speaking at Stennis, and I got a phone call, and there was a young lady on the other end. She said, are you Mr. Manfred Klepper? I said, yes, I am. I said, I am from the World War II Museum in New Orleans. I said, are you putting me on? Is this some kind of a scam? She said, no, don't hang up. She said, I'm telling you the truth. I am from the World War II Museum. I would like to talk to you. I look at my wife and I'm thinking, wait a minute, no, that can't be. I said, come on, don't put me on. And she said, believe me, I'm not putting you on. I said, okay, what do you want? She said, I would like to meet with you. I said, okay. She said, when is a good time for me to come over? Because I want to take some pictures, videos, and I want to hear your story. I said, are you kidding? She said, nope, I'm not kidding. I'm going to do it. So we made arrangements for her to come one day, and she came with camera equipment, everything else, and she set everything up, and I told her my story, and she asked me questions, and I showed her my book that I'm very proud of because my grandson was my inspiration. I'll tell you about it. And so anyway, she just took all the information down, and she said, this will be in the World War II Museum. You can come and see it. Well, to this day, I was in New Orleans many times, and yet I have never seen that museum. I have never been into the World War II Museum, and I'm sad. I'm very unhappy that my wife and I were not able, or we didn't go to see. People ask me, I said, I can't tell you. I don't even know where it's located or what area. It's a new area that they were building at that time, which is the I guess the Holocaust area, if I'm not mistaken, or library,
Living library.
living library, and that's where I'm at. And so that was a real big honor for me, and that I've never seen it. And the other honor I got was from J.P. McFadden and his wife Michelle, and they took me by surprise. And I got a call one time. I was still at the hospital in Broussard at Camelot, and I was home for the weekend. And I got a call from Michelle saying, "Are you doing anything the day after Labor Day?" I said, "No, not really." He said, "Well, we would like you to come to Mungus Park. We're having the memorial, Veterans Memorial, is being dedicated, and the ribbons cutting will be taking place on the day after Labor Day." I said, "It would be our honor to come." My wife said, "Oh yeah, sure, we'll go." So we went that day. They had quite a few different speakers there. The governor was there. The mayor, president of Lafayette was there. A lot of different people were there and spoke, and JP spoke, and it was really, really, I enjoyed it very much. And then we went around and so forth, and Michelle, if I'm not mistaken, but Michelle was the one that took me around to one side, and there is a big stone in the ground where a whole bunch of other stones, which is the memorial, where all of the veterans are on there. And she showed me, and showed the JP, that stone, and it's marked Manny Klepper, United States Air Force, and my date from 51 to 59. And underneath there, it had on there, Holocaust survivor. I was really, really thrilled. And again, I want to thank both of you for that great honor that you bestowed upon me. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And it was really a wonderful thing. So I had quite a few things that were done. But I'll tell you one thing, this is something that I never thought I would ever do, and that is speak about the Holocaust or Kristallnacht. And it took our Rabbi Barry, a good 3 months when he used to come. He was a part-time rabbi for Temple Shalom, and he came on Friday nights, and he took me to one side, and he said, "Okay, Manny, you know, this year Kristallnacht is going to fall on a Friday night, and I would like you to speak." And I looked at him and said, "No, I will never speak. Never in a million years." I was asked in Chicago from a couple of temples to speak, and I says, "No, I don't want no part of it," because it just was something I didn't want to do, because as a kid, when I came here, I had bad dreams. My mother used to wake me up in the middle of the night because I had really bad dreams. And one day my aunt, her sister, said, "It's time to take Manny to see a psychologist or psychiatrist because he's not doing well. He's got these bad dreams." So I went. For 2 years, I saw a psychiatrist who helped me out, talking about it and so forth. And I decided from that moment on, I will never, ever speak about Kristallnacht or being born in Germany. I could care less. I said, I want to forget about it. Well, he spoke to me for 3 months. And finally, I said, "Okay, Rabbi, I'll give in. I will speak one time, and that will be on the 9th of November, on the same day when Kristallnacht happened. But that's when the services were that fell on that particular night. And I did speak, and I didn't realize that I got everything out of me, and I really enjoyed it. It helped me to bring back memories, and like I was told, let people know what happened to you when you were 6, 7, and 8 years old, when you were in Germany, and what you saw, which was tragic, and what you had to go through, and so forth. And they said, it's a good thing. Well, it did. And after that, well, I started speaking. I know I work for Great Harvest Bread Company, and Michelle and JP owned that company. I worked for them for 9 years. And I remember that Michelle, who was a homeschool teacher and teaching the kids, had me talk to the homeschoolers at the big library, the new library that had opened up on Johnston. And I spoke there, and that first time the rabbi was there, and he happened to bring pictures from the Holocaust. I mean, a whole bunch of pictures that he had, and he put it there so everybody could see it. And so I spoke there, and about a year later or 2 years later, Michelle asked me again if I could speak to another group of homeschoolers. So I did. And again, the rabbi wasn't there that time. I just spoke myself. And I just kept going, and I got phone calls to speak here, to speak there, and I spoke quite a bit in Baton Rouge. Quite a bit of my speaking was done in Baton Rouge, here at the temple. And I even spoke in Broussard at a school there, and in a few other places. Well, as I was speaking, I was at in Lake Charles, and a gentleman whose name was Mark. I can't think of his last name, but his name was Mark. He was a professor at McNeese University. And him and I, we talked, we had pictures taken with him, myself, and the rabbi. And he took me to one side. He said, have you thought of making a book or writing something about your experience as a kid? I said, no, never entered my mind. He said, well, I think you should. But he showed me, he spoke himself. His father was in a concentration camp. He escaped from one, he was in another one. And when he came to this country, he wrote a paper about, I think, 2 or 3 pages, a paper that that he was never able, he finished it, but was never able to talk to anyone about. But he did give it to Mark, and Mark spoke on it. He said, you know something, that's what you should do. Well, everybody told me about it, and one day my grandson said, you know, Grandpa, maybe we should do something and write it. I said, well, what do you have in mind? So he said, well, I'll tell you what, he just got a brand new laptop from his parents, and he was going to ESA. And he said, I'll come over on Saturdays. We usually come every Saturday, come over, because we used to make eggs for him, and we had breakfast together. And one day we sat down, and I started dictating to him, and he started putting it all on his laptop. And we did that, for quite some time, almost a whole year, I think. When he had time on a Saturday, he came over. He might have spent an hour or something, spent 2 hours, whatever. Didn't have any homework, he spent a little longer. In the summertime, when you had vacation, he spent a little more time. And it must have taken a whole year. And then, this is the book right here. And it's a little booklet. And it has everything in there that what I just spoke about, and probably a little bit more of the things that I forgot to talk about. So anyway, he is the one that designed everything in this booklet. The first thing he did, there were quite a few people involved after everything was done. And my wife was the first one to read everything that he wrote. The next one was Stephen's mother, who was a teacher. She's retired now. She's from New York, and she read through it, and she read everything straight down the line. And the last person to read and make her final judgment was our daughter, Michelle, Professor Michelle Feist. She teaches right here at UL. And so when she got through reading it and did all of the what had to be done to it, you see, when I speak, I don't use periods, question marks, or commas. I just talk, and that's it, which is wrong. I should really, but I don't. It's something that just goes through my head, and I just speak. So this is the book that my grandson designed, and it's really a beautiful, beautiful book. And it has on there Manfred Klepper, transcribed by Joshua D. Feist, edited by Joshua D. Feist and Michelle I. Feist, which is his mother, who's sitting right there. And so he said, we have to put pictures in. Well, this is the first picture we put in there. As you can see, I have blonde hair and curls. That is me, the young one. And my sister is there, my father, and my mother. And this picture was taken in Germany. And we have it here. And that was the first thing. And also, let's see if I can find it real fast. This is me after I wrote the book. I didn't have any hair either. So, this is, all right, this is the visa that had my picture on it as a young kid. I was, when that picture was taken, I was 8 years old when we came to this country, and that's when this picture was taken. This is both sides. This is what we traveled with, that I had a show for every country that we went through, including the United States. And this right here is a manifest from the ship. It's very hard to see. You have to use a magnifying glass, but it's marked USS San Francisco, and that was the name of the ship. And so this book, I have to thank quite a few people for. My wife, Stephen's mother, Stephen, and our daughter, Michelle. And I thank you very much. Oh, by the way, this book is, you can get this book at Amazon.com. I don't have any book with me. I brought this with me in case I forgot anything, I could look into it. But I think I got most of it that I need to talk about. So anyway, yeah, and thank you to my grandson. He's the one that put it on Amazon.com. Now, I do not get a penny from this book. All the money that's generated from this book after Amazon gets their share goes to Temple Emmanuel, Temple Shalom. And I've donated that. I do not want any money that comes from talking about the Holocaust. I feel it should be donated to either a temple or a church or a organization like cancer or whatever. And this is what I have set up. So it's very important to me that it gets done this way. And I have to thank a lot of people from our temple, and also even where I was at the hospital, I sold quite a few of these books. I had one book standing on my on my dresser area, and people came in and said, "What's this?" I said, "This is my book on Kristallnacht that I spoke about." They said, "Where's that?" I said, "I was born in Germany. I came in this country in 1940, and I'm 90 years old now. For that matter of fact, today's the 9th, right? 9 days, I'll be 91. And that's what happens when I reach my 7th birthday." So it was a pleasure talking to each and every one of you. Thank you.